Meghan Markle's latest interview is an extraordinary walk on the weird side that, frankly, fills me with concern for her hapless husband, Harry. If the petulant prince hated his past role as the royal spare, what must he feel about his current role as Meghan's spare, reading his wife's rambling, self-obsessed psychobabble in the new edition of Harper's Bazaar magazine? It is hard not to conclude that Harry is little more than a bit-part player in the magnificent Ms. Markle's glorified life story. As is her ladyship's wont, she waxes lyrical about just how much Harry loves her, how his love for her is bold, how no one in the world loves her more. But there's no mention of her love for him, if indeed it even exists. You get the distinct impression that the difficult Duchess is so consumed with herself that there's no room in her narcissistic world for anyone else. Meanwhile, the Californian claptrap she spews is like a foreign language. Somehow, she believes making jam is courageous. She hopes her kids Archie and Lilibet recognised the valour of boiling up fruit in the kitchen. And she's off. I hope they see the value of being brave. They saw it when the jam was just a pot on the stove bubbling. Did they? On the basis that her children are not as lost in West Coast space as she is, maybe, just maybe, they didn't think much about their mother's cooking at all. And then on to Harry. Poor, hopeless Harry, trapped in the spider's web. He loves me so boldly, fully, and he also has a different perspective because he sees media that I wouldn't, eh? What on earth is she on about? No one in the world loves me more than him, she continues. So I know he's always going to make sure he's got my back. Always? I wonder. I wonder how much more of this smothering, asinine verbosity the dim Duke can take. Perhaps he likes it. Perhaps he'll be happy to drown in moronic Meg speak for the rest of his days. If so, I wish him the best of luck. God knows he's going to need it. But back to that interview under the glossy front page headline, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, meets her moment. What does that even mean? And then the even more nauseating, after years of being subsumed by other people's narratives, the Duchess of Sussex is ready to author her own next chapter. Clearly another dig at the British royals. But memo to the top team at Harper's Bazaar: just because Her Montecito Majesty vomits pretentious semi-English gobbledygook, there's no need for you to follow suit. In fairness, credit to writer Caitlin Greenwich for exposing the haughty airs and graces of the former game show glamour girl she sat down with at two venues. Their table at the exclusive Beverly Hills Hotel, journalist Caitlin noted, was a calculated choice because it was in a prime position where all the other diners could see them. But oh my God, the coffee. Not just any coffee, a cappuccino with Meghan's picture drawn into the foam. Oh, she cries, I recognise this picture. That's from our trip in South Africa. But it's when they meet again at the New York home of one of Meghan's friends that the studio lighting man's daughter's exalted new status really comes into play. When I enter, writes Caitlin, the house manager announces, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, even though we appear to be the only other two people in the house. Good Lord, who the hell does the Duchess of Suits think she is? In case she's forgotten, she's a cable show actress with a talent for social mountaineering. On the Harper's cover, more of that trademark bravery as Meg poses barefaced without makeup. So far, so good. Then she starts talking, and it's downhill all the way from there. On the fascinating topic of imperfection, she garbles, I'm a mom with kids at that age when they are constantly learning something new. I watch them face things that feel completely insurmountable. But you can remember and say, I know it seems really hard right now, but trust me, that's going to come so easily soon. Oh, how you wish she'd just shut up. But of course she doesn't. On she drones. I can give myself the same grace as a founder. There's no such thing as perfect. I too get to make mistakes. Meghan makes mistakes? Surely not. But as she concedes, there's not a lot of fun in trying to be perfect, especially when you spectacularly fail at it. Eh, Meghan?
Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has urged the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, to fly to America to give evidence to Congress about his links with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's get reaction now from the doyen of royal commentary, the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Hi, Mark. I loved the way that you teased this before the commercial break, because this does feel very political, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Why is suddenly Sir Keir Starmer so concerned about the Epstein situation? Is this a dead cat bounce so that we don't talk about the state of Britain at the moment under his premiership?
The state of Britain, to knock those videos and headlines of him tripping, which I thought was very unflattering.
And metaphorical.
Him falling. Yeah. And I just look at this and I think I have to be, honestly, I'm fearful for what I say here, because I know that this is a prime minister that will jail people for their opinions and what they will say. So yeah. I actually hesitate to criticize him, but it does not feel like an authentic passion of his. This just feels like he is trying to not only divert attention away from some of Britain's weaknesses, but it just feels like he wants to go with the flow and say in typical politician form exactly what he thinks the people want to hear, whether he means it or not. We have seen that the artist formerly known as Andrew is not necessarily truthful. So why would anybody trust him sitting down and testifying before the American government? Why is this a fixation for anyone when we've seen that he's capable of dishonesty?
Most definitely. He's a foolish man of poor judgment and has brought only bad headlines for the royal family in recent years. But Kinsey, is it time to end the punishment beating of the king's younger brother?
No. He needs to go away. Exile is the only answer. He needs to disappear for the sake of his daughters and their future and their children's future. The monarchy the monarchy looks weak with the amount of people that are dropping out. You know, we used to hear about King Charles talk about the slimmed down monarchy. Well, it happened, whether he wanted it to ultimately or not. We lost the Queen, we lost Prince Philip, we lost Harry and Meghan, and now we've lost Andrew. You know, for Prince William to have a stronger monarchy as a King William, it would be nice to have the support of Beatrice and Eugenie. But unfortunately, with Andrew's sins hovering and constantly being brought up, I think it jeopardizes their future within the fold and their ability to help out William when he needs it. When he did a garden party, I believe it was last year, he invited all of the cousins. And for a second, it was like a breath of fresh air, because it looked like the royal family was strong. There were multiple people there representing them, and they were young and fun and beautiful. And I think that with Andrew poking around, we saw him recently at Windsor. I think he was getting ready to get on a horse. It angers people and reminds them and all of us of what he's accused of. He needs to just quietly disappear, and the same goes for Fergie.
Who would be king in 2025, beset with problems as a result of his younger brother Andrew and, of course, his runaway son in California, Prince Harry? There's a real risk that King Charles's monarchy will be tainted by all of these scandals, not of his making, Kinsey.
I know. Don't you feel real sympathy for him over this?
Yeah.
Because this is also a man that shows up, will sit there and shake hands with every single person that waited to see him in the rain. And he has cancer. And I think that we forget that he comes to London once a week for treatment, because he does consistently show up, and he's doing these hard tours and he's going overseas. But we forget, because of that work ethic, that he's an ill man.
He most definitely is. Will Andrew take any notice of the Prime Minister?
Well, he doesn't seem to take notice of many people. He is, and that's part of his problem. But this is the conundrum that is always hanging around Andrew. He had a deadline last week to respond first to the Congress request, and now obviously it's a big political hot potato in the United States, and they feel that whether he's always denied the allegations as Andrew, but the point is they're saying his name comes up in these files. He might be able to clarify the situation. And this is the problem from Andrew. What does he do? Well, in his case, he thinks he should do nothing. It does feel slightly unprecedented of the Prime Minister to step into this, because normally they keep themselves well away from the issues surrounding the royal family. But here he is saying if he was in his shoes, he would be responding. And bearing in mind, of course, Keir Starmer has a legal background as well, as we know. And in this case, he feels Andrew should quietly step forward, although he doesn't say it by naming him. I think by implication he is suggesting it may be best if he did. But unfortunately for Keir Starmer, I think like a lot of people who disagree with him, Andrew definitely probably will disagree with him on this issue.
Rupert, do you ever anticipate a time when the Andrew Epstein soap opera comes to an end?
Not at the moment. Well, in a way, if Andrew is so convinced of his innocence and he always denied every allegation, then the way you can deal with it is, if that is the case, then come forward. Then that might be the way to stop it escalating. But every time there is something that's coming out, there are further sort of rumour mills, allegations against him, then it just compounds the problem. And for the royal family, they may think that they've sent him now into sort of out into exile, stripping him of his royal titles. It will not go away, as even Donald Trump's finding it difficult to deal with, and the political fallout from releasing them or not releasing them. This is a major issue that is a major headache for the royal family, and for Andrew, it is a millstone round his neck of his own doing that is causing the problems for him and the royal family.
Why do you think the Prime Minister has made this intervention? Could this be the so-called dead cat, so that we're not talking about high inflation, high borrowing costs and the country in decline?
That's a very cynical view, and probably not without foundation, Mark.
Well, it's always tricky, isn't it? And I know, look, what's great about you, Rupert, you don't get dragged into party politics. You are irredeemably neutral, which I highly respect. But it's always a bit of a red flag when any politician of any political colour starts intervening in royal matters.
Well, yes, and this is why it seems very strange. And, is it, what the headline probably 3 days before the budget, if that's the front page of the Mail on Sunday, then that's good work by the Labour Party. We've managed to make sure that it's not all talking about what's happening on Wednesday. So, and that is the way the politicians work. They love a deflection story. And Andrew is a reflection of just how easy it is to get his name onto the front page. And are there bigger problems for everybody? Yes. Is Andrew... Look, we know what the allegations are horrendous, and the whole thing is horrendous, but is it the biggest talking point in this country? I actually think it's probably Marmite sausages, but actually for most people, it is, what's happening on Wednesday, not the endless Andrew saga, yet it is. But it's an irritant of the highest order for the royal family, and the endless fascination of what Andrew's going to do next.
Rupert, stay with us. With me in the studio is the broadcaster Duncan Barks. Do you think at some point the punishment beating of Andrew must end?
I think so, for the sake of the royal family. Listen, I'm a royalist. I think the royal family does have a place in our society. I often say to people when they go, I hate the royals, I don't think they should exist, I say, what's the alternative? And they go, we should have a presidential system. And I'm like, well, you would have ended up with President Blair or President Boris Johnson. So, I mean, it doesn't work for me. At some point, it has to stop. He has been punished quite significantly. Just looking at this at face value, of course he shouldn't give evidence, because the last time he did anything in public it was a complete disaster. So I think he should leave it well alone. I agree with the somewhat cynical assessment that this is the dead cat strategy, with only a few days ago to what is being seen as a pretty hard-hitting budget. For those of us who bother to work, this is a great way of keeping the budget off the front pages. But also, I think there's a bit of mischief making as well, because, you know, Starmer in his early days was on the editorial board of a publication called Socialist Alternatives. You know, deep down, I don't think this guy particularly likes the royal family, so I don't think he would be particularly upset if it started to unravel further.
Most definitely. Rupert, what about revelations in the Sun newspaper this weekend that Sarah Ferguson is eyeing a megabucks TV deal to give a tell-all interview?
That doesn't feel surprising. What's been extraordinary is how the royal family managed to keep her under control. And that's why they always sort of, not say, put up with whatever she got on with since the divorce from Andrew, and because she felt that she could tell all, and that was always going to be a complication. But now that she's out on a limb as well, where's her money coming from? And as we know, she likes the lavish lifestyle, then this may be a way forward for her. Because I believe there are television outlets in the United States, maybe in the United Kingdom, loving the prospect of an exclusive sit-down with Sarah Ferguson about her life and her involvement with the royal family. But it's that would suggest to me, if she does, then she has really been backed into a corner, and it would be very interesting to hear what she had to say. And that's why people are prepared, presumably, to offer her a lot of money to come up with her side of the story.
And where do you think that the king is at the moment with regard to all of this drama around his brother and former sister-in-law?
I think absolutely fed up with it, probably, and saying, I wish it would go away, because he can't actually get a good headline, because it's always a distraction about what's going on with Andrew. Well, it might be even about his errant daughter-in-law and what she's up to next. You know, again, it's all just negative headlines, whereas he and his and the heir to the throne want to try and promote the good side of the royal family. So anything that keeps these negative headlines is a distraction and further eye-rolling, and maybe a little bit more than that from the king with his reaction to these endless negative headlines.
You've got royal. Well, you've been close to royal circles.
Yes, absolutely.
And you've spent time with Prince Andrew and other members of the royal family. You know the family well.
Yeah.
What do you make of Starmer's intervention here that Andrew must face US Congress?
Well, it's idiotic, and the thing is, there are three, not just one, but three investigations going on in the US Parliament, in both houses. And Andrew is not obliged to give evidence because he isn't charged with anything and he's not a US citizen. And I can't see he's got anything to gain by doing this. And if I was him, I wouldn't bother. And the problem is these investigations are open-ended. There's no time frame on them. They're just sort of rather like Epstein himself. The whole thing's a mess. And also, why is it among all these hundreds of thousands of so-called Epstein files that the whole thing centers on Andrew? I mean,
you're so right.
Andrew spent very little time relative to all the other people who were involved with Epstein, and we're talking about big names: Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, some of Warren Buffett, Woody Allen, some of the most famous American figures, and they seem to be getting away unscathed by their associations. So far, it's only the Brits who've been hammered by the Epstein scandal. And, of course, it's Mandelson. Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison. Mandelson's lost everything. Andrew and Fergie have lost everything. And maybe quite rightly. But the point is, the Americans who spent day in, day out with this man, who helped him build his fortune, these are the people who should be investigated to see what was going on in the very dubious way Epstein operated.
And it seems that Andrew, although a man of poor judgment and low intellect, is the fall guy here.
Yes, it very much is. He's an easy target. They know he can't answer back. They're using the published so-called memoirs of a dead sex worker And she may have been a victim, but she was also a sex worker, and not by any means a whiter than white, virginal innocent. There's no question about that. Don't forget, Virginia Giuffre's husband had a restraining order against her to keep her away from him and her children. And I mean, you have to wonder, why did he get that? It won't be because she was behaving well towards them. And Andrew, in the meantime, he can't answer back because he's a royal. They know that. He's not American. He's a big name, the British royal family. So for the American press, it's a wonderful way of switching the spotlight from all the dreadful American perpetrators of Epstein's whole network and circle. Because I always say, as you see in so many television crime thrillers, follow the money.
Yes.
Now, Epstein's money was a massive fortune, which he's admitted didn't come through property, and therefore it must have come through financial market trading. And Ghislaine herself was just taken her stockbroking exams. One wonders why. Of course, she was going to start broking as Epstein was, and clearly there's a big question about insider dealing. Did he build his fortune through special knowledge from the likes of Bill Gates and co? I'm sure that may not be the case. I don't want to slander Bill Gates in any way, but you do have to ask the question, how did this man amass one of the biggest fortunes in America? He owned the biggest house in Manhattan. I mean, and Andrew had nothing to do with that.
Indeed, and he was a key figure, a pillar of the establishment, sort of the New York US elite of business, showbiz connections, royal as well, supposedly, as you say. And Bill Clinton, for example. I mean, he used the Epstein jet like it was a bus service.
Absolutely.
He lived on that plane. And yet we're told nothing to see here.
No, exactly. And we're all just supposed to believe it because he says so. And I mean, Mandelson, I suspect there's much more to come out because he called him his best pal. And you don't call someone your best pal just by if he's a casual acquaintance.
Given that Peter Mandelson is a homosexual man, does that therefore dilute the argument that there may have been some, malintent on the part of the former ambassador to the US?
I've no idea. I mean,
because the main sort of thing that's lobbied against, that's argued against those close to Epstein is somehow that they may have used young women for sex. I mean, that's the most potential egregious crime, isn't it? It doesn't seem like the Epstein connection is necessarily a financial one.
No, I mean, he used sex, but it is sort of sex money. I don't know where the drugs came in. I'm sure there was some rock and roll around. But I mean, the whole thing is a horrible mess, and I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of it.
No.
Because I think some of the most powerful Americans there are, and the richest. And in America, big money buys you big influence, are burying this as hard as they can. And with 3 investigations going on in the American government, through the American parliament or government system, 3 different investigations which are getting nowhere and are open-ended, the whole thing, to me, stinks to high heaven.
Royal exclusive, Fergie time. Sarah Ferguson considers offers for a tell-all TV interview, a 6-figure sum on the table for a first chat after losing her title. Let's get reaction now from the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday newspaper, Charlotte Griffiths. Good morning, Charlotte.
Morning, how are you?
I'm very well indeed, and this is King Charles's worst nightmare, an AWOL Fergie that spills the beans.
Yes, you did actually predict this, Mark, the other day, and I disagreed with you, and I hold my hands up. I was wrong because you did predict, rightly, that there's a chance Fergie might go rogue. And what The Sun is reporting today is that courtiers are equally as worried she might go rogue because, of course, she's been completely cut off. She has no house, no status, no money. So really, actually, what else is there for her to do? And if somebody like Oprah is coming forward with a huge money offer, then, you know, actually, really, she'd be a fool not to take it.
Well,
And some
yeah,
people
I've
are saying
heard various reports about her finances, and some people say she's got enough cash, but she did sell a Mayfair property at a loss. That was supposed to be an investment, which she sold after 4 years at a loss of around £400,000.
Yeah, that was such an extraordinary house, and I've reported on it since she bought it, because on the deeds there was a clause in it which said she couldn't sell it unless Beatrice and Eugenie agree that she's allowed to sell it, which is highly unusual. And there was a lot of speculation that perhaps it was some sort of backhanded inheritance from the Queen or something, because it's just really unusual to have that caveat on it. But anyway, the girls did agree to let her sell it at a loss, and the reason they claim that it was at a loss is because the tenant that was already living in it said he wanted to buy it. But the timing was extraordinary, because they sold it just before all of this kicked off, and it did free up, you know, £4 million for her. Although she sold it at a loss, she's still got £4 million. And I was told that she's reinvesting that money into another property, but they won't say where the property is or what property it is. At one point, people thought their money was going towards Royal Lodge to pay for its upkeep for another few years, but obviously that is now a moot point.
Most definitely. If this interview happens, Charlotte, what might she say?
I think she's very likely to discuss the email that she sent to Epstein saying, "You're my esteemed friend, I'm sorry for calling you the P word." And I think she's going to try and justify that by saying she was threatened by Epstein. And we know from reports that Epstein called her up in Hannibal Lecter style voice and threatened her. And I think she'll go a bit deeper into that, because really what she'll be wanting to do is not so much a mea culpa, but explaining that email, because that email is the thing that's so damning. And I think she'll do it with someone quite serious. I mean, God forbid we have another Newsnight scenario, but I think she would perform better in a Newsnight scenario than Andrew did. I think she might not go for the Oprah thing. So if she was offered Oprah, it would be a huge, huge amount of money. So that would be quite irresistible. But what she really needs to do is something quite serious, so she can fully explain. And it's not just another one of these interviews she does often, really, where she's saying, "Oh, silly me, I'm just silly old Fergie, and oops, I made another mistake," on those kind of softer morning show type channels that she often does in Australia and America.
Most definitely. If she is paid several $1 million for the interview, then the broadcaster involved will want some spicy material.
Oh, for sure. She'll have to really go into the thick of it. But actually, Fergie's never really shied away from being very frank and honest. Well, I say honest. You know, she gives her version of the truth. She goes into gory details that perhaps other royals wouldn't do. And, you know, recollections may vary, I'm sure. So I think they would get their pound of flesh out of Fergie, actually.
Do we know how angry she is that Andrew will be accommodated at the expense of the King on the Sandringham estate, and that she's been turfed out so that she can either sink or swim?
Well, what I've heard is that I think she probably is angry, but really mostly she's very, very low and in a very low place, and has been loafing around, drinking at the outdoor pub that they have in Royal Lodge. It's kind of a makeshift pub, and the girls are very worried about her. It's more a sort of deep, deep depression than anger. But there is some talk that the King might find some minor property for her, because to mitigate this risk of her going nuclear. And speaking to an interviewer. But the thing is, if it's just some 3-bed cottage, that's not really demotivating for her. You know, she'd probably rather take a couple of £1 million from Oprah than a small cottage. So it's a very delicate game that the King is playing. And I think if she is angry, she wouldn't show it to him, because she needs him. She does really need him to bestow some kindness upon her, because she's on her uppers.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because she's box office in North America. She was only the Duchess of York and just the spouse of a rather insignificant prince, but she's a global figure, and the Americans are very interested in Fergie, which is why they'll no doubt pay top dollar for her story.
I think the Americans have always loved Fergie. She's managed to kind of go over there. Every time she's had a big crisis, she's gone over there. She's started up some small business or other, selling tea bags, doing little interviews. And they seem to lap it up. So maybe she could go there again. I would say I think it's a well-trodden path for Fergie, and it might not be that interesting. She's actually gone there so many times. She's done the mea culpa with a glossy interviewer like Oprah so many times that really, of course, there's a new context now. But I think maybe she should try somewhere else, like Australia, maybe the Middle East. She might sort of move in higher circles in those kind of regions.
We know that she was persona non grata for Prince Philip, who, it's my understanding, didn't speak to her for years. Do we know what Charles thinks of Fergie?
I think Charles has got a real soft spot for Fergie, and I know that Camilla has a soft spot for Fergie because they've got kind of family connections that go way back through Fergie's late father, Major Ronald Ferguson. So there's quite a strong link, and I heard that one of the reasons the King, until all this scandal broke, has been so welcoming to Fergie is actually with Camilla's encouragement, because she's just very fond of her, which is ironic, really, because of course Fergie was such good friends with Diana. So I do think he wants to do her right. I think he's quite a kind man, the King, and he sees the bigger picture and probably realises she's completely and utterly at the bottom of a rock bottom. And it's actually kind of cruel to kick someone when they're that far down. And it's, a little bit dangerous, because we know that she's kind of at a low ebb, and there's a certain amount of duty to care to Fergie, I think.
Well, yes, and I think perhaps, Charlotte, you're a little too generous to me saying that I called it that she'll sell her story. I tend to err on the side of caution based upon what you told me in our last interview, which is that she doesn't really wish ill will on the royal family. She's not a vengeful character. And therefore, even now, with millions on the table, she may be reluctant to press that nuclear button.
I agree. I do think she is quite an honourable person, which I know is going to get me slammed because it sounds ridiculous. But I think she makes terrible decisions, and she's got herself in a frightful mess. But I think she does have this sort of honourable streak where she just really wants to people please and do the right thing. And of course, she does exactly the opposite at every possible moment. But I do think I agree with you on that she wouldn't really want to hurt or destroy the King or take them down in a Meghan and Harry style way. There isn't that vengeance that Harry so clearly has, and perhaps Prince Andrew has as well a little bit. But they've never slagged off the royal family in public. No matter what they've done, they've always stopped at that point.
Yes, in that sense, Sarah has the breeding, doesn't she? And she appreciates the importance of the monarchy. And if you mentioned that she's on good terms with the King, then that may help her. The issue you've got is if there's money on the table, she will have to dish the dirt. It all depends how desperate she gets. Meanwhile, what's the latest with Andrew, plain old Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? Is he home and hosed now?
Is he home and hosed? Well, he hasn't left Royal Lodge, and he's just had the freedom of the City of London taken away from him. And he barely leaves. So recently he was allowed to go riding around Windsor. And that was because, quite literally, the King needed to get him out of the house. And it was terrible optics for the royal family, because then he was pictured on horseback, which is what they exactly didn't want to happen. However, they had to just get him out of the house. He hadn't left the house for weeks. People were really quite concerned about his mental well-being. So off he trotted around Windsor Castle, but they still really want him to just disappear, and they want to get him to Sandringham as soon as possible. I think that might happen after Christmas, from what I'm hearing.
That's interesting. I mean, Michael Hamilton is the chief reporter at The Sun that's got the Fergie exclusive. I mean, are you buying this story? Because at the moment it is still in the realm of speculation.
Well, if the Fergie doing the interview is still in the realm of speculation, I think possibly there's an offer on the table. The people around her are being incredibly quiet, more quiet than ever, which does make my spidey senses tingle a bit, because often that happens when you've been, as you say in journalism, bought up by someone.
Right.
And so not one single detail can come out. And the person who's very keen on doing things like that is people like Oprah, those big American channels. You're kind of in breach of contract if you let one tiny detail slip out ahead of a big interview. So that's what makes me think maybe there is something going on. However, whether she's signed on the dotted line is unlikely, because she's probably still negotiating her living arrangements with King Charles. But as you said before, the thing is, when money's on the table with Fergie, she cannot resist money. She's obsessed with money. She spends far too much. She's in terrible debt all the time. Her children's book has just been pulped. That was obviously something that she was really hoping would be a financial lifeline for her. So I think that it's still speculation, but only because she's still in negotiation.
Most fascinating, isn't it? We will watch this one with keen interest. Royal exclusive, Fergie time. Sarah Ferguson, formerly the Duchess of York, of course, is considering offers for a tell-all TV interview in the wake of her public downfall over links to sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. US channels are said to be willing to pay six-figure sums to secure the chat with the former Duchess of York. It would evoke memories of her ex-husband Andrew Mountbatten's Windsor car crash Newsnight interview. A source told The Sun Andrew's had his chance to tell his story. Now it's Fergie's time. This could be a major headache for the King, couldn't it,
It is a major
Paul?
headache, isn't it? I mean, it was a catch-22 anyway. What do you do with Andrew and Fergie's, mutually part of that, exclusively part of Andrew and his team? But they're cut loose now, and she doesn't have the protection of the royal family, and she's going to need to make money. This six-figure fee will become seven figures. The juicier the gossip is.
Yes.
So she's going to be sort of pushed towards saying as much as she possibly can. I think there's going to be a lot of squeaky bums at the palace right now, Mark. I think it potentially could be a big issue. She hasn't done anything too mental in recent years. I mean, I don't think she's as stupid as Andrew. Andrew's Mateless interview in 2019 was possibly one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's easily up in the top three of the stupidest things I've ever seen. And that came from his hubris, his arrogance. I think she's a slightly more shrewd character than Andrew is. But at the same time, what's she got to lose now? This is the problem. They've cut them loose and they've said you've got to go and make your own way. Can't sign a contract because it's not we call it the firm, but it's not a business. What are they going to do? They can't do anything about it.
Well, that's right. I run a royal channel on YouTube, and I predicted weeks ago that if you turf Fergie out, she's a loose cannon, she becomes dangerous. And just 2 weeks ago, it was announced that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will be accommodated on the Sandringham estate at the expense of the King, and that Fergie must go it alone. And I said that's an expensive mistake, because for the sake of a few million quid, he could have taken care of Fergie, at which point the family secrets remain just that. The problem with Sarah Ferguson, Paul, is that she knows where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, she's been out. Didn't they get married at about 86? That's now 40 years ago nearly. She knows absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. So they'd be mad not to have looked after her, and I don't think they have. It doesn't look
and
like
she knows everything about Andrew, so she could dish the dirt on him. But she also knows everything about Diana, because they were close friends. She knows everything about Charles and the relationship with Camilla. She knows everything about Anne and Edward. It would be quite literally the royal scoop of the century if she were to do it. And as you've said, if she's taking a couple of $1 million from a US network, she's going to have to give them something. This won't be a softball interview.
No, it can't. She's going to have to give something for it, and it's going to be serialised, and there's going to be more, and the more she says, the more she'll get. Maybe this is a shot across the bows. Maybe she's going to go and do this, and maybe it encourages the royal family to just pay her to keep quiet.
Well, they might have to, because the other thing about Ferguson is that she is a money-grabbing grifter, right? Cash is her commodity. It's what she lives for. She's profligate. She still thinks she's a member of the royal family. She lives beyond her means and always has. And she needs money. The book deals have been axed because, of course, she's become such a toxic brand. She had to sell. I'm no expert on property, right? Curse the Allsop, I am not. But 4 years ago, she bought a house in Mayfair for, I think, a couple of million. She sold it at a loss of £400,000 just a few months ago. Now, you don't sell an asset that you've got at a loss unless you're in financial trouble.
Not at all. I wasn't aware of that.
400k.
But that actually tells you a lot.
And apparently the house was bought as an investment. Well, that didn't go very well, did it?
No, well, not at all. And as a house in Mayfair, you could hold. There are ways and means. You could hold on to it. You could borrow against it.
Yes.
You'd be mad not to keep it. You'd be mad to sell it at a loss. By the way, I mean, she is all the things you've said. I feel slightly sorry for her. She through association with Andrew, she's been thrown out.
Yes.
Andrew may have lost his titles under a lot of scrutiny, but he's going to live a very comfortable life from here on in.
You're so right.
She's not going to. So she might be angry about that as well. You really don't want an angry Fergie.
No, and the issue you've got is her security as well, because yes, she's now become an obscure figure within royal circles, but she's one of the most recognisable women in the world.
Yep.
And she would be a target for crooks and terrorists and all the rest of it. And God forbid, by the way, God forbid, because she's committed no crime. But it's an issue, it's unfinished business. It looks like, Paul, doesn't it, that Andrew has decided that he'll take this accommodation in Sandringham, he'll go away quietly. It seems a deal has been struck, and I think that's a bulletproof deal. I think Andrew's a lazy man. I've been reading Andrew Lowney's book about the former Duke, and he likes watching TV, riding his horses, and driving the Range Rover in royal property. He doesn't need much more than that. He's not the sharpest tool in the box. He'll be quite content. Fergie, on the other hand, a loose cannon. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because she's always, in a way, been something of a thorn in the side of the royal family.
Yeah.
You know, this is a woman that brought headlines about toe sucking back in the day, following her divorce from Andrew. And she always cut quite a sort of comical figure within royal circles. She was uncouth. She sort of spoke out of hand. She was unpredictable, a bit wild. She's never been great for the royals.
No, and I don't think she's going to be now either. and you know what, if you look at this from her perspective, why should she now? Why should she?
She's got no skin in the game.
Absolutely no. So she's nothing to lose. She's not going to do anything criminal. So she can speak. She can share her opinion on all of the things that you said, and just do it until the cows come home, until there's enough $1 million in the bank for her to live a comfortable life.
Because actually, we've had controversy from Fergie over the years, but that's within royal circles as a kept woman. So we don't know what the AWOL, sort of no skin in the game, loose cannon Fergie's going to do. She's under financial pressure as well, and that's the biggest thing, is when people need money, they will do anything.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be great fun for us to watch. There's no two ways. I mean, what do you say? You know, I'm a royalist. I love the royal family. Yeah. But Andrew has been a thorn. It's incredibly toxic. And this is the toxic man's ex-wife. It's going to make great telly. It
most definitely is. And it's proved with the Andrew story so hard for the king to move on. You've still got the American authorities wanting him to go over to Congress to give evidence. He has, in the last 24 hours, refused to do that. But the Andrew story hasn't gone away either, has it? Yes, they've done a deal for Sandringham, but the king, this really threatens to taint his entire reign.
It could do. I already think this king's reign is quite tainted, actually. I know he's not a well man. Hopefully he's recovering, and we all had high hopes for him. But his mother was obviously the pinnacle, and I think a lot of the hopes are now being pinned on William. I think basically we're just waiting for this reign to end. Yes,
because of course the other issue you've got is that Charles and Andrew are brothers. It's the same generation. And what's going to happen when William becomes king is it's the new direction for the family, isn't it? And it's, you know, the young, fresh people. There's no dirt on William and Catherine. They're as pure as the driven snow. And you do wonder, I mean, would the king consider stepping down given his health and given all of the drama and scandal surrounding the family? You know, should he take an early bath? What do you think?
Well, he's not responsible for Andrew. He maybe has a grudge to hold. Andrew was the favourite son. It's the only blot on the Queen, really, the fact that she chose Andrew of all of her children to be her favourite. You know, I don't understand that. Perhaps Anne I could understand, but certainly not Andrew. I don't think he'll ever step down. I think if he's so ill that he needs to, perhaps, but then unfortunately if you're that ill, it's only a matter of time anyway.
Yeah, most definitely.
Rupert, we got to see Catherine looking absolutely when does she not look great? I mean, she looks like a supermodel 24/7, but we saw them at the Royal Variety performance at Royal Albert Hall in London on Wednesday. They debuted a new coat of arms, I believe. We got to see them with Paddington Bear. I heard that this is not as glamorous as it looks when it comes to being a royal engagement. It might look like flashbulbs and celebrities to us, but for them, it's still a job. Do you have an opinion there?
It's definitely a job, but it's a very good job in terms of the money that it does raise. Now, the Royal Variety performance has been going on for such a long time, and it is a regular occurrence. And of course, it brings together a lot of famous acts, particularly mainly British acts, but obviously it's a chance for the theatre land and comedians and other people to showcase their talents. It will be on national television. I believe it gets shown extensively around the world. And that's why it's very important that the royal family do turn up. And in this case, it was the Prince and Princess of Wales. And of course, Paddington Bear is a musical has just launched. And so good shop window for that. Very clever what they've done in terms of how they've created Paddington. But obviously we saw pictures of them with Paddington Bear. And that brings back memories, of course, of the late Queen with that stunning performance at the Platinum Jubilee in the sandwiches with Paddington. He's an iconic character. Films have been successful. Now they've transferred it to musical. But it's a great occasion. Not always. If you go back when, it was a very famous moment. Are you a Beatles fan?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't give me the biggest hoo-ha for the Beatles.
Help,
but,
I need somebody.
Yeah. Well, that's probably Meghan's cry. But anyway, the very famous line of John Lennon turning around and saying that, and those in the cheap seats are down there, and those in the posh seats will just rattle your jewellery. So it was back in 1963, and sometimes it's not always great. But hopefully the acts who've been produced this year will make it an entertaining watch for the millions, not only in Britain, but around the world.
I read someone said that was inside that the Prince and Princess of Wales got a really, really warm welcome when they entered the room, that it was just applause and cheers. And I like that they have moments like that. I know that Prince William is notoriously shy and probably does not want to stand there and take in all of the cheers, but I'm glad that they feel appreciated every once in a while.
Well, I think it's important they're both together, because whenever you can say, if William turns up, and I'm not dissing him, there ain't the Stardust. You know, he's just obviously heir to the throne turning up, and that's important. But as soon as the trouble and strife turns up, it's a different ball game. And we know that there is great interest in what she's wearing, and the way the whole thing. So it does make a big difference when she's in town at something like this. There's no two ways about it. You can't get away. In terms of the eyeballs that the event gets, it will be significantly more because she has turned up and, as you say, looked magnificent for the Royal Variety performance. So
and we did see her. We saw a great speech from her last week, and then over the weekend we saw a beautiful letter written by Catherine about how we need to show empathy and compassion to those affected by drug and alcohol addiction. So, they told us in January the princess was in remission, but they were trying to manage our expectations as to how often we would see her and how much we would get the privilege of seeing her out and about. But we've kind of seen a ramp up in the last few months of the year as we look forward to her Christmas Carol concert, which will record December 5th and air on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We've seen a lot of her, so that's been a blessing. But I also think that they were right to manage our expectations, because we have seen a lot of her in the last few weeks, but we didn't necessarily see as much of her throughout the year in general.
Well,
and that's okay. And that's okay.
That's only to be expected. And I think the other big takeaway was the sort of slightly of the Jessie J, obviously the singer, talking about her own cancer battles to Prince William. And so there was a great...
Yeah, and Catherine. They hugged each other, yeah.
Yeah, so there's great empathy. And, and Jessie J has been very open about the trouble, her battles with cancer, and has been very open about the problems that she's faced. So that was, I suppose, a very important, sort of more humbling moment away from the glitz and the glamour. That, they may be superstars, but in the end, they're just like you and I. They will suffer from anything that you and I can suffer from. There's no difference, just because they are successful musicians. And I think that was an important moment within the whole night of that. And I think it has been good, the way that Catherine has been putting out the fact, we need to help, and going through her own experiences And it's all part of what she believes most passionately. The early years, helping people, that's her mantra, that's her purpose. And she will try and make sure she has a good shop window for it. And obviously last week was a good moment for her to put her views forward and how important it is for these things to be made aware, and also to make sure people are helped who are suffering from whatever it may be.
I stewed on this story overnight, Kevin.
Okay.
A source telling Page Six that Meghan Markle allegedly walked away from a 2022 Variety cover shoot with a $1,700 green gown because it was all part of archiving her clothes as a royal. It gets worse because they've talked to People magazine, as one does.
Okay.
There's been a new statement to People magazine.
Okay, what is it? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we do have to dissect the fact that someone tried to justify this by saying that they archived her clothes, and the People magazine response is similar. So I do think it's fair if we continue to dissect that statement. But People magazine, we're told by Meghan's spokesperson, the insinuation that any items were taken without the full knowledge and agreement of the on-set stylist or their respective teams is not only categorically false, but also highly defamatory.
Okay, fair enough.
Any items kept were done so in total transparency and in accordance with contractual arrangements, which is an odd direction to go when the Kardashians are accusing you of lying about a contract, last week. So is this contract similar to the one that the Kardashians have, which they say is non-existent? According to a source, brace yourself for this, Kevin. It's standard for talent to retain select items from photo shoots, sometimes for security reasons, including to prevent a potential resale or unauthorized auction.
Yeah.
Clothing worn by members of the royal family and other public figures has been targeted for resale in the past, making the practice both common and precautionary. So basically, Meghan saying, I hate my diehard fans that would want to buy something I wore. I mean, she's blaming the fans that would want to buy something she wore?
So let's get this straight. Let's be fair to Meghan. She definitely 100%, we've got the statement, she definitely 100% did not walk away with this dress. She didn't steal it. She archived it.
The audacity that she's trying, or her team or whoever is trying to play off the fact that she would walk away without asking, with a piece of wardrobe from her Variety cover shoot, to archive her wardrobe as a royal. You're not a royal anymore. You are an influencer. You are, and according to Page Six, a thief. So I'm having a really hard time with this justification. What say you?
Well, you're right. I read this story in the New York Post on Page Six, of course, and you're thinking, hang on, so she's saying she did this photo shoot. There's a $1,700 shoulderless green gown that she wore for the cover of Vanity Fair, and she went off with it. She took it away, and you think, so people sort of say, well, hey, Meghan, did you sort of steal that dress? And her people go, oh, no. It was because she has to archive what she wears as a royal. So yes, the royal bit's annoying, but what does that mean? So if I walk into
it means that she considers herself a Princess Diana type character that's going to have museums dedicated to her beige fashion choices one day, and screw you, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's that side of it, but the other side of it is this. If I walk into a store and I, steal a packet of cigarettes or some candy or something, and I walk out, when the security guards pounce on me and say, you're stealing that candy, I'll go, no, you don't understand, I'm archiving it. I mean, she's just come up with a word for what looks suspiciously like theft. And to be fair to Meghan, she's not the first celebrity who's ever done this. It's an old trick. They turn up, they do a photo shoot, and they go, oh, I really like that coat, and then they get allowed to keep it. It looks as if Meghan has gone down that road but hasn't really asked. And she's just gone off with a $1,700 gown. And as page 6 says, as various observers have said, well, you know, surely she could afford to buy her own $1,700 gown. Very extraordinary story. And she needs to come up with a better excuse than I was archiving it.
Let me get back there, but I want to read all of this clearly that I have down for the lawyers, basically. A source told page 6. Yeah, I got to be careful.
Yeah,
A source told page 6 that Meghan Markle allegedly walked away from a variety shoot with a $1,700 gown because it was all a part of archiving her clothes as a royal. And I initially saw this conversation starting on the St. Meghan Markle Reddit. And it's this one-shouldered gown that's green that is seen in her new promo video for her upcoming Netflix holiday special. And that's where people started to put 2 and 2 together. And this was after Andrew Gold's podcast, Heretics, where an individual claimed not specifically this dress. Her name is Vanessa, and I would slaughter that last name if I attempted to say it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. But she was a journalist on the scene, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And so she said what's shocking about hearing these kinds of stories is that Meghan is in a $15 million mansion and should be asking for the product versus just sneaking off with it. And page 6 says they've confirmed this with at least 3 different people. It's the third one that claims that this is, you know, an archived, royal archived piece. But I'd also argue if this is a sacred archived piece, why are you wearing it in a promo for your Netflix special? Shouldn't it be locked away in some airtight crate prepared for the Meghan Markle Museum one day?
It might be an idea, but what I don't get is, you know, it can't be a justification for taking something away that you don't own. Oh, well, I've got to archive it. That doesn't justify what she did. Now, for your lawyers, Kinsey, and for all of us, in fairness to Meghan, she is not the first celebrity to do this, and she won't be the last. Most of them try this stuff, but not many of them come up with the excuse, I'm archiving this outfit as a royal. Only Meghan could do this.
This is annoying because we just read this Harper's Bazaar article, which we'll get into, that says she insists on the house manager announcing her to the reporter, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Kev, she's not going to let this go. I mean, you quit your job. You are no longer a working royal, and you live in the United States of America, where we don't acknowledge titles. What, you know, this is all about ego. And a part of me feels like it's a little sick.